If you've been watching any of the videos on this channel, you'll know that 1, my name is Oscar, hello, and 2, my mission is to get as many people as possible interviewing their loved ones and making a life reel, a short documentary film about that person's life story. I think it's one of the most important things you can do for your family, and I believe that it should be seen as our moral obligation to sit down and interview our parents and grandparents so that their stories can be passed down for generations to come. But what do you do when the parent or grandparent that you want to make a life reel for doesn't really know if they want a life reel made about them? Do you respect their wishes? Do you ask them incessantly until they say yes? Do you emotionally manipulate them into complying with your demands? Do you threaten them with physical violence? All of these are great options, but they can make Christmas a little bit awkward. Instead, let's talk about a few things it's worth mentioning to your loved one who's maybe skeptical about the whole life reel thing or just a bit nervous to be interviewed on camera. Number 1, you get to decide who sees the life reel. Maybe the most important thing is for your loved one to know that they have complete control over who sees the interview footage and who sees the final life reel. It's a big thing you're asking them to do, not just taking time out of their day, but also answering some personal questions and potentially talking about stuff that they've never talked about before. You might ask a question that makes them cry or feel embarrassed. They might really bare their soul and be vulnerable with you. As an interviewer, there's a responsibility that comes with that. It's important that your loved one knows that you have attorney-client privilege, complete confidentiality. They get to sign off on the final life reel before anybody else sees it. Number 2, you are worthy of a life reel. Another thing you might hear your loved one say is, "I'm not an interesting person. Who wants to hear about my life?"
I don't think I'll be remembered for doing anything amazing. I'm just an ordinary person.
I think this is a pretty common feeling among some people, that they haven't led a life that's worthy of note. It might just be a British thing because a recent survey showed that 55% of Americans believe that their life story is worthy of being a book or a movie. As a Brit, it's easy to hear that statistic and laugh, but the Americans are right on this one. The life reels that I've made for my family members have been extremely well received even by people outside of my family. People are interested in the stories of other people, and I truly believe that everybody has a story worth telling. You don't have to have climbed Everest. So it's worth saying that to your loved one, telling them that they're not a boring person, that their life story does have value, and that you wouldn't be asking them to sit down and talk about their life if you weren't interested. Even if we were to accept for a moment the notion that you, the interviewer, are the only person in the world interested in the life story of your loved one, isn't that enough? Isn't that worth sitting down in front of a camera and having a conversation for a couple of hours? Number 3. There's no record of your stories. We always talk about writing down the stories of our loved ones, but we never do. Spending hours writing down their experiences, trying to make the writing engaging and make sure that it doesn't lose pace, it's really quite difficult. Most people aren't natural writers, and even mosterer people are not natural readers. But everybody can talk about their experiences, and an audience is going to be much more engaged watching and listening to a person talk about their life story, rather than just reading about it. So try to reiterate to your loved one that their stories haven't been recorded in any way, and it'll be much easier for them to just sit in front of a camera and have a conversation with you, as opposed to spending hours and hours of time and energy trying to write those stories out. My grandpa died when I was 6 years old, so I never really got the chance to know him and hear his stories, never mind sit down and interview him about his life. But he did write a little piece about the ship Circassia and his experiences working on it as a soldier during the Second World War. And it was only recently, when going through a bunch of old voice memo tapes, that I found a recording of him reading this piece of writing aloud.
As dusk descended each evening, the ship blacked out, portholes being covered by deadlights, and a feeling of claustrophobia descended, to be broken later by the hilarious sight of men trying the unusual activity of slinging hammocks, then the even more unusual activity of trying to get into the things.
Having the piece written down was always nice, but hearing it read aloud was absolutely extraordinary. I nearly fell out of my seat when I discovered the recording. It's certainly the longest recording we have of him speaking, and we only have a couple of short clips of him from our old home movies when I was a kid. I played the recording for my dad, who said to me, "It's nice to hear his voice again." That's why life reels are so important, because the essence of a person is difficult to distill in writing alone. But if you record their voice, or better yet, record them on video as well, their personality really shines through. Number 4. I want my grandkids to know about you. When I finished making my grandma's life reel, all of a sudden I had this incredibly precious 30-minute documentary about her life. My future children will be able to learn about the life of their great-grandmother in her own words and pass that down to their children, and so on. I interviewed my mum for her life reel just over a year ago. I knew when we were recording it that it was possible that she might not live to meet my kids. Unfortunately, my mum did pass away a few months ago. She'll never get to be a grandmother. She'll never get to see what became of me and my brother Elliot. And if I am lucky enough to have kids in the future, they'll never get to meet their Nana in person. But they will get to meet her virtually. It's not perfect. It's certainly not the situation I'd have liked. But it is better than nothing. I get real comfort knowing that my kids will know what my mum spoke like. They'll get to know what her personality was like. And I like to think that they might even love her, even though they'll never get to meet her. If your loved one doesn't quite understand why you want to make a life reel about them, tell them that it's because you don't want future generations to miss out on the chance to get to know them, even if it's just virtually. Number 5, I want to know you better. This is, I think, one of the most important reasons to interview somebody about their life story and make a life reel. Sometimes a parent or a grandparent will tell you something that makes you go, I never knew that. Why did you never tell me that? And it makes you wonder what else there is to know about their life, what other things they've just failed to mention over the years. It might also be the case that you know almost nothing about the life of your loved one and you're looking for an opportunity to get to know them on a deeper level. I really believe that sitting down with them for a few hours and talking about their life story will bring the two of you closer. So maybe it's worth telling your loved one that you just want to get to know them a bit better. Well, there we are. That's 5 ways of convincing your loved one to submit to your interrogation without having to create an intimidating message where they cut out the letter, all the letters are made out of the different letters that are cut out of the magazines. If you'd like to know more about life reels and how to make one, click the link in the description to Life Reel Academy, my online course which teaches you all the steps to creating a life reel that looks and feels like a professional Netflix quality production. It's a really fun, beginner-friendly project that will help you create something that you will cherish for the rest of your life. I hope you liked this video. If you did, there is a button down below that is made specifically for people like you, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, then feel free to stick around and subscribe. Thank you. All the best.